Hello and welcome back to the channel. On today's tutorial, I'm going to be sharing with you how to cut and sew an underbust corset dress. So if it's your first time viewing my channel, please hit on the subscribe button and don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. So let's dive right into today's video. So here is the pattern, and to work on this we are going to start with the bust side of this dress. So I've gone ahead to cut it out, and I've also cut out the lining. I cut out 2 pieces, and on this other side I cut out 2 pieces. So I'm going to go ahead to open it. So when you're cutting your pattern, you're actually going to add ½ inch round it on the sides, at the upper part and below. So on this part I added ½ inch on top by the side in front and below, where we're going to join it to the other part of the pattern. So now this is the wording. I'm using a light wording, so I'll be cutting out 2 pieces for each side, making it total of 4 for the center. So for each wording I'll be cutting out 2 pieces, so making it 4 in total because I'm using a light wording. If you're using a thicker wording, you can cut out just 1 piece. So also you can go ahead to use an already made cup if you're making this. So just like I said, I'll cut out another piece for each side and I'll iron it together. The wording has a shiny part and I'm going to iron it, and I'll have 1 piece. On this other side also, I'm going to cut out the wording for the side, and to cut out the side you're going to mark your nipple to nipple divided by 2 and add about ½ or 1 inch by the side, and I'll go ahead to cut it out. So if you have any question, please leave it at the comment section. And I'll also cut out 4 pieces for the side of the wording also, just like I did for the other part, because I have a soft wording here. So now after cutting this out, I'm going to go ahead to cut another 2 pieces that I'm going to use for the other side of my cup. So what you're going to do next is to go ahead to place, and you're going to iron. So I'll be cutting the rest later. So I'm going to place my wording because I'm using a soft wording. If you're using a thicker wording, you shouldn't be cutting 2 pieces. So, and also on this side I will repeat the same process and cut out wording for the remaining side. So you're going to go ahead to iron it, that is if you're using a wording, and after that I'll be joining this with ½ inch. For the lining, I'm going to iron gum stay on it, and I'm going to join it also. So now to work on the yoke part of my pattern, I'm going to place add ½ inch beneath or below it, and I'm going to cut out. So on the side, do not add any ½ inch because we have already added it when we were cutting out our pattern. On the yoke, I'm going to go ahead to cut this out and also add ½ inch, which we'll use to stitch up the neckline of the yoke, because I'm going to cut another piece which we'll be using to turn the yoke part of this dress. So next I'll place this on another mesh, and I'm going to go ahead to trace out exactly what I have, and I'm going to open it up, place, stitch up the neckline. After stitching up the neckline, I will turn and trim it off and then top stitch the lower part. So here is my yoke. So I turned it and then top stitch on the lower part. So now we're going to join this to this. From the underbust we came up by 1 inch and we added ½ inch for joining allowance. So you're going to measure 1.5 inches. After that, that is where your yoke is going to start. So you go ahead and place to stitch with ½ inch. So I'll go ahead and use my pin to explain it. So measure 1.5 inches from the lower part, and you're just going to take your mesh and make sure it aligns. Now I'm going to go ahead to start pinning my yoke to the dress, to the cup part of the dress or bustier part of the dress, and make sure it aligns. So after pinning, I'm going to go ahead to stitch it up with ½ inch. So at the lower part, at this point, I'm going to start stitching with a pinch starting from the lower part and then with half inch. So now I've gone ahead to stitch it, and the next thing is to go ahead to attach the other side. So after I'm done attaching it, this is what I have. Now we are going to introduce the lining, and on the lining I ironed gum stay on it. So you're going to join it this way. First, take note of that 1.5 inches where your yoke meets the bustier, and you're going to go ahead to pin. So what you're pinning is the cup area with the yoke and the lining part of this dress. So while you're pinning, another important part is to make sure that your yoke is in between the lining and the fabric. And while stitching, you're going to go ahead to stitch on that seam line that you joined the yoke to the main fabric to the end. So I'll go ahead to do that. After sewing, make sure that you notch also, or you can go ahead to top stitch the lining, the half inch down to the lining. So I went ahead to notch mine, and this is what I have at this point. So you're going to place this together, start stitching with a pinch and end with half inch. Repeat the same process at this side, and on the other side flip it this way and stitch up the sides of your dress. So after stitching that, we're going to move over to the lower part. Remember, this is the lower part, and I went ahead to cut this out. I added half inch in front, added half inch in front also on this part, and also remember to add half inch at the upper part and at the lower part of your pattern. So I repeated the same process for this. For the center part, you can go ahead to cut it out on fold, but I cut out mine into 2 pieces. So now I'll go ahead to join it, and after joining it, this is what I have. Now we are going to go ahead to create boning channels for this. So I'm going to create about 7 boning channels. First, I'm going to place, and I'll stitch with half inch, flip it inwards and top stitch on it. So I'll repeat all this for this point, and I'll also go ahead to mark for the other side. So you can go ahead to use 2 inches or 2.5. I marked 2.5 earlier, but while I was creating mine, I ended up using 2 inches space interval to avoid my boning channel entering the sewing allowance of the dress. So I went ahead also to mark where I'll be creating my boning channel, and I'll go ahead to do that. So after I'm done sewing my boning channels, this is what I have. I have about 7 inches. So this is the lining also. I ironed gum stay on it, and I'm going to join it to this part. But first of all, you're going to join the lower part of your dress to the upper part of your dress this way. So now I'm going to place, and I'm going to pin and stitch with half inch. So don't forget to also iron your dress out with your tailor's ham. So after stitching with half inch, this is what I have. I'm going to notch this, but before doing that, I'll place my lining and I'll stitch on it. So this is my lining to join. I'm going to flip it, and I'm going to stitch with half inch this way. So after stitching it, this is what I have. I went ahead to also stitch the side, so go ahead to notch it so that it's going to be very relaxed. And after doing that, I'm going to flip it to the right side. So this is what I have after I'm done sewing, and next we'll be working on the back pattern of this dress. So I'll go ahead to cut out my pattern. By the side, I won't add half inch. On the armhole, I won't add half inch. At the upper part, I'm going to be adding half inch. I won't add half inch at the zipper part, and at the part we have a curve, I'm going to go ahead to add half inch round and half inch on the neckline. So on the lower part also add half inch. So I'll also go ahead to cut out the lining and gum stay for this particular pattern also. So after I'm done cutting out, I'm going to go ahead to place the lining on the gum stay, and I'll go ahead to iron this out. But before I go ahead to iron, I'm going to explain how to turn the back part of your dress. So now I'm going to place this, that is after I'm done ironing, and I'm going to go ahead to stitch on the neckline on this part, the zipper part by the side, and I'll leave the armhole and the lower parts open. So for the skirt pattern, I'll just go ahead to trace this. I'll trace the lining and the skirt exactly, and I'll go ahead to cut it out. Why I'm cutting the lining exactly is because I'm going to turn it out with a crinoline. So this is my skirt and I'll go ahead to stitch it. I'm going to go ahead to stitch with 1/2 inch at the lower part with the lining, and after I'm done stitching that, this is what I have, and next we'll be stitching the sides of the dress. So go ahead to stitch up the sides of the dress just like I said, and iron your dress out. So after this, you're going to also repeat the same process for the back pattern. Place and stitch with 1/2 inch at the lower part, and also stitch by the side of the dress because we are turning this with a crinoline. So after I'm done stitching it, this is the back pattern, and I want to join the back part of the upper dress to the lower part. So when I was stitching, instead of using a loop at the back, I added a rope, so I'll be using that to tie the neckline of the dress. Go ahead to join the upper part to the lower part with 1/2 inch, and before joining, go ahead to add your dart, and I'll be joining this and stitching up the zipper side from the zipper down to the lower part because it's an A-line dress. So now this is the front part of the dress, this is the skirt that I have turned, and this is the upper part. Now we have like a little curve in front, and I'm going to go ahead to work on that. So when you place your pattern this way, you're going to go ahead to trace the skirt, but before I go ahead to trace it, I'm going to be passing my boning to all the boning channels, so this will help hold the waistline. This is an underbust corset. It will help hold the waistline of the person wearing it, and if you added a lacing bar to this dress at the back, it will help also to snatch the waistline very well. So I'll go ahead and insert boning to all my boning channels. After doing that, I'm just going to go ahead to place this, and I'm going to trace out the waistline. So we have about 1 inch little basque in front. I'll trace this out, and I'm going to go ahead to cut it out. So this is it after cutting it out, and I'm going to notch the center. Now I'm going to place it and join my dress. After joining, this is what I have. This is what my underbust corset dress looks like. Now we are going to place and join the shoulder. So I'm going to use the shoulder to wrap the shoulder we have in front, the back shoulder. Place it this way, and I'm going to flip it, and I'm going to be stitching with 1/2 inch, and repeat the same process for the other side also. So now this is the sleeve. I was supposed to actually cut this out on camera, which I was in, but the chalk lines were not showing, so I had to cut it off the camera. Now we are going to be attaching this to the dress. So go ahead and join with 1/2 inch to the main dress. So after joining, this is what I have, and the next step is to go ahead to shape our dress. So now to shape my dress, I'm going to place my tape, and I'm going to mark the shoulder to bust line, shoulder to under bust line, and shoulder to waist line. So the fastest way to get that is place your tape starting from your under bust. The under bust is 12.5. From that point you can trace your bust, and after doing that, I'm going to mark the waist line, which is about 18.5 inches. And after marking that, I'm going to go down, and I'll place and measure 7 inches to get the hip point of this dress. So for a much taller person, you can go ahead to use 8 inches. So I'm going to measure what I have on the bust. After measuring it out, I have about 22.2 inches, and the bust I am working with is 37.5 divided by 2. So 37.5 divided by 2, I have about 18.7. So I'm going to minus 22.2. I'll take 18.7 away. So whatever I have left, I'm going to go ahead to mark it. After minusing, I have 3.5 inches approximately, and I'm going to divide it and mark the remaining at one side, and from there I'm going to go ahead to measure the bust circumference. I have divided by 2, which is about 18.7. So after marking that, you want to go in a bit by pinch. So this is to hold the bust part very well, but if you don't want to do this, it is optional. So we are going to move over to the underbust. The underbust circumference is 32 inches. Divided by 2, I have 16. I'm measuring here, I have 20 and half. So whatever I have, I'm going to divide it into 2, measure and mark my bust, the bust circumference I'm working with, which is 32 divided by 2. I have 16. At the under bust, I'm going to go ahead to repeat the same process. So at the bust side, you can go ahead and measure your bustier. You know, there's a method on how to shape a bustier. You can also use that, but this is the easiest way for a beginner to avoid having too much confusion. So at the hip point, I'll go ahead to insert the hip circumference. So after doing that, I'll go ahead to connect down to the hip point and also connect to the other point. So going down to the knee point, I'm just going to go in by 1.5 inches. If you want yours to be fitted, go ahead to go in by 2 inches, but that might be too uncomfortable. So I'll just go ahead to connect, and from that point, I'm going to trace down to the lower part with half inch. I'm going to slant it down with half inch to the end, because we're actually turning the lower part with a crinoline. At the armhole part, you're going to go ahead to measure the armhole circumference divided by 2. The armhole circumference I'm working with is 17 divided by 2. I have 8.5, mark and connect. So I added half inch just at the sleeve side, and from there I'll mark half inch down to the lower part of the dress and stitch. So I'll go over to my sewing machine and I will stitch this. Repeat this for the other sleeve also. So after I'm done stitching, this is what my dress looks like, and now we'll be working on the structure sleeve. So on how to turn your skirt with a crinoline, I have a video on how to make a mermaid skirt. You can go ahead and check it out on my channel. So to create that little structure we have at the upper part, I went ahead to cut out 2 pieces of fabric, and I'll be using one to illustrate. So this is 4 by 22 inches. So now I'll be cutting out gum stay, and I'll iron gum stay on one of the piece. So that is the one I'll be using as the lining of the dress. So after cutting this out, I'll go ahead and stitch on the side with half inch. So after stitching, this is what I have. I will go ahead to mark out half inch, and then from there I'll create a line about half inch, which I'll be adding my boning to. So I'll run a stitch on that part, pass my boning through it, and then I'll fold up the lower part and top stitch to give it a neat finishing. So I'll go ahead and attach this to my dress. You can hand stitch or use a machine to top stitch on it. So after sewing, this is the final look of the dress. If you find this tutorial very interesting and educative, please don't forget to hit on the subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up, and see you in our next video. Thanks.